This is a story about a man who went to work one morning and ended up inside a whale. Michael Packard had been diving the waters off Cape Cod for decades, not as a hobby, not for the thrill of it, as a job, a hard, physical, unglamorous job that started before most people's alarms went off and ended when the catch did or the body gave out, whichever came first. He was 56 years old, built for the work, and he knew these waters the way people only know places they have spent their lives inside of. Every shelf, every current, every shadow on the sandy bottom 40 feet down. He knew what belonged there and what didn't. He had survived things before. Years earlier, his small plane went down in the jungle of Costa Rica. The other passengers died. Michael was found 2 days later, barely alive, deep in the jungle, having dragged himself through terrain that should have finished the job the crash started. He recovered. He went back to diving. He was the kind of man who, when the world knocked him flat, got up and returned to the thing he loved. The morning of June 11, 2021 was calm and clear off the coast of Provincetown, Massachusetts. The water was the particular flat blue that New England's summer mornings sometimes produce, deceptive in its stillness, concealing everything beneath the surface, with a neutrality that gives nothing away. Michael arrived at the boat with his crewmate Josiah Mayo, the son of a well-known local whale expert, which would later feel like a detail from a story that had been written before it happened. They headed out to Herring Cove, one of Michael's regular dive spots. The water there runs to about 30 or 40 feet, shallow by some standards, but deep enough to be dark at the bottom, deep enough that the surface becomes a distant shimmer above your head and the sounds of the world above fade to almost nothing. He kitted up. Tank, regulator, wetsuit, fins. Everything he had done 1,000 times. Josiah would watch from above, tracking the air bubbles that rose from Michael's regulator to mark his position, the diver's equivalent of a heartbeat on a monitor. Michael tipped backward off the side of the boat and entered the water. He descended. The light changed as it always does, the surface brightness breaking apart, going blue-green, the details of the bottom sharpening as his eyes adjusted. He was looking for lobster. That was the job. Move along the bottom, check the rocks and the crevices, work the spots that years of experience told him were productive. Methodical, unhurried. He had done this so many times that it required no conscious thought, just the slow sweep of his body through the water and the practiced eye moving across the bottom. He had been down there for a few minutes, maybe more. The day was starting well. Then something hit him like a truck. That was the word he used afterward. Not a nudge, not a bump, a truck. One moment he was moving through open water with a clear view in every direction. The next, a massive, incomprehensible impact, and then total darkness. Not the darkness of a deep dive where the light simply fades. This was instant, absolute surrounding darkness, the kind that means you are inside something. He felt himself moving, carried forward and upward, his body enclosed by something enormous. His first thought, the thought that any diver off Cape Cod would have in those first blind, shocked seconds, was shark. White sharks had become a fixture in these waters in recent years, following the gray seal population that had exploded along the outer cape. A white shark was the obvious answer. But then he registered something wrong with that answer. There were no teeth. Whatever was around him, wherever he was, there was no pain, no tearing, no jagged pressure of a jaw doing what jaws do. He reached out his hands and felt the walls of his situation. Soft, slick, enormous. The space around him was tight but not crushing. He was folded into it, compressed, his body bent and held. And somewhere above him, at a distance that seemed impossible, was a faint gray light, the surface. His breathing regulator had been knocked from his mouth in the impact. He found it in the dark, fumbling with hands that were not entirely responding to instructions, and got it back between his teeth. He was still breathing. He was still alive. He was inside a whale. He knew it the moment the thought formed. The size of the enclosure, the texture, the absence of teeth, the way the thing around him was moving. Purposeful, upward, accelerating. He was in the closed mouth of a humpback whale, and the whale was deciding what to do about it. In the seconds that followed, and he would later estimate he was in there for 30 to 40 seconds, though he said it felt both like 10 and like an hour. Michael Packard's mind did what minds do when they confront the absolute end of everything. It got very quiet, and very clear. He thought about his sons, 12 and 16 years old, waiting for their father to come home from a regular day at work. He thought about his wife. He thought about what it meant to die this way, in a place and a manner that no one he had ever known had ever been in. Am I going to run out of air? Is it going to swallow me? Is this how you go, Michael? In the mouth of a whale? He struggled. Of course he struggled. He was not a man who stopped struggling. But this was 400,000 pounds of animal moving through its own element with absolute authority, and a 56-year-old man folded inside its closed mouth had exactly no leverage over any part of that equation. He pushed, he twisted, he tried to find some surface to push against, some gap, some weakness. There was nothing. The whale held him without effort, without malice, without any awareness that it had a man inside it at all. Because that was the thing that nobody initially understood about what had happened to Michael Packard. The whale did not want him. Humpback whales do not eat people. They cannot eat people. Not in any meaningful sense. A humpback's throat is roughly the size of a softball. It is built for small fish, for sand eels and herring and mackerel. And the way it catches them is through a technique called lunge feeding. The whale opens its mouth to an extraordinary width, accelerates through a school of fish, takes in thousands of gallons of water and everything in it, and then filters out the water through the rows of baleen plates that line its jaw. What should be left is only fish. Michael Packard had been in the wrong place at exactly the wrong moment, 40 feet down, in relatively shallow water, in the direct path of a feeding humpback accelerating through a school of what were probably sand lance. The whale didn't see him. It couldn't have seen him, not in time, not at the speed it was moving, not with a mouth that had to open fully to work at all. One marine biologist put it plainly. It was like a biker with their mouth open accidentally inhaling a fly. The biker does not want the fly. The fly does not want to be there. Neither party has any good options. Above the surface, Josiah Mayo had noticed something was wrong. He had been watching Michael's air bubbles rising steadily from below, the thin column of disturbance that tells a surface crew everything is fine. Then the bubbles stopped. He wasn't concerned immediately. Divers sometimes pause, but then the water around him began to churn. Something large was moving fast below the surface, something far larger than a man. Josiah leaned over the side of the boat and watched the shadow rising. His first thought was also shark, great white taking his diver. He braced for what was coming. Then the shadow broke the surface and exploded into the air in a cascade of white water. And it was not a shark. It was a humpback whale, young by the look of it. And in the eruption of foam and spray, Josiah saw something else. A man. Michael Packard was airborne for a fraction of a second, flung from the whale's mouth as the animal thrashed and surfaced, launched sideways into the air, and then he hit the water and floated. He lay on the surface on his back, looking straight up at the sky. White water everywhere. The whale was gone. Back under, back into the blue, done with whatever strange detour its morning had taken. The surface was calm again within seconds, impossibly calm, as if nothing had happened at all. Michael floated. He couldn't move properly. His left knee was dislocated, agony radiating up through his leg. His body was a catalog of impacts, bruises forming across his torso and back, soft tissue damage from the pressure and the movement, the general trauma of having been inside something that operates on a scale the human body is not designed to experience. But he was breathing. He was on the surface. The sky above him was the same flat blue it had been when he went in. Josiah got him into the boat. Michael was conscious. He was lucid. He was, by the clinical standards of what had just happened to him, astonishingly intact. Josiah radioed for help and drove hard for McMillan Pier in Provincetown, while Michael lay in the bottom of the boat and the coast of Cape Cod grew steadily closer. At Cape Cod Hospital, the doctors found a dislocated knee, soft tissue damage across his body, and bruising so extensive it covered most of his torso. They found no broken bones. They found a man who had been inside a whale for 30 to 40 seconds at 40 feet below the surface and had come out the other side with a story that no one in the entire recorded history of human beings on the ocean had ever told before. He posted about it on a Provincetown community Facebook page that afternoon from his hospital bed, a thumbs-up photo of a man who looked like he'd been in a car accident and was choosing to regard this as a reasonable Tuesday. "A humpback whale tried to eat me," he wrote. "I am very bruised up, but have no broken bones." Then he said he was going back to diving as soon as he healed. Of course he was. This was Michael Packard. The jungle in Costa Rica hadn't stopped him. The whale wasn't going to stop him either. The ocean doesn't change. It is the same flat blue every morning, giving nothing away, concealing everything beneath the surface with perfect neutrality. Michael Packard understood this better than almost anyone alive. Better, certainly, than anyone else who had been inside it and come back out to say so. He went back to work. He dove the same waters. He looked for lobster on the same sandy bottom. Somewhere out there, a young humpback was also carrying on, lunge feeding through schools of sand lance in the waters off Race Point, entirely unaware that it had briefly contained a human being and would spend the rest of its long life being the most famous whale in New England.